Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a musician, an artist you quite can't pin down to a particular genre? I had a great conversation with Jeff Allegue. He is a fantastic bass player, classical guitarist, you name it. We get deep into the music industry and how AI is really screwing things up for everybody. Hey, check it out. What's the connection between Taylor Dane, Joan Jett, and the Trans-Siberian Orchestra? You know who it is? Jeff Allegue. Jeff Allegue, welcome to the Long Island Sound podcast.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Nice to see you.
Yeah, call me Steve, or you can call me what my wife calls me, but then I'd have to hit the explicit button. I found a-hole is actually a term of endearment. So at least that's the way that I look at it. So Jeff, you're a bass player. You're trained classically on the guitar. I read the Dan Papers review of your work back in 2012, and there are a lot of accolades. And I can only say this from my experience, just watching you on YouTube and the songs that you do, man, you're so diverse, and it's really a blessing that you put the music up for people to enjoy.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I love so many styles of music. I always have. So it's just you have to keep up with it because the techniques involved in different styles of music require a tremendous amount of practicing and effort, So
yeah. You know what I find interesting. I never like to pinhole somebody into a genre, and sometimes that happens. They're known as a blues person or a particular genre.
We got plenty of those around here, that's for sure.
Yeah. And what I found interesting, so I am correct. You were trained classically, probably started playing around 10 years old, right? You're originally from Amityville.
Yep.
Not stealing your whole store,
Yeah.
thunder here. Moved out to Bayport, great little hamlet, Bayport, People's Pub. I talk about that place all the time. I love.
Yeah, I'm literally live down the road from the People's Pub. That's my friend Linda.
Oh.
It's Linda Ringhouse runs that place.
Yeah,
so she's a family, basically a family member. She grew up in my house. She worked with my mother, and my mom had a store for years in Sayville, and one of Linda's first jobs was working with my mom. So it's all very incestuous around here.
Yeah, it's a great town. I look at Bayport just like Babylon. It's just really kind of a nice area.
Babylon's great. Like you said, I grew up in Amityville on the water. That's beautiful, and South Shore of Long Island is gorgeous.
Yep. We got the Great South Bay. So you're a true Long Islander.
Yep.
And so I'm going to hit some highlights, and I'd love you to tell me how that influenced your music. And one of the things that pop out in your history is the fact that you were on Star Search with Ed McMahon, part of the Tall Boys. So give me a little, bring me back to those days and the excitement that you had.
The Tall Boys was a band I have with my brother John. We wrote a ton of songs. There was a point where that's all we did. I set up a little studio. Well, before I even had what home studio stuff was available, we were in real studios that we were spending a fortune doing stuff, but I would always try to work out deals, So
sure.
There was a studio in College Point, Queens called Monkey Hill Studios. It was a 24-track place, great studio. And it was the first real recording studio that I was able to work in regularly. I made a deal with the guy where I could start at like 11 o'clock at night and work through the night for, I think it was like $250 a month or something.
Wow.
But it was insane. So I'd work all day, get in my car, drive to Queens, and then we would record through the night. Me and my friend Jimmy Murphy, great, who worked at the studio. That's how we knew about it in the first place. But that's where I really learned to record with him. And we wrote a ton of songs. My brother and I he was young, really started when he was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 7 years older, so there was a big difference there. But we both kind of grew up with the music that I loved. So he would be influenced greatly by whatever I was listening to, which was Beatles. And then later on, we just loved Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson, Squeeze, The Police, that whole period of songwriting and pop music. So our band, the Tall Boys, was very much in that vein of that style of Beatlesque pop music. Really good band. And we were playing around, like every band does. And the first thing I did that got noticed was I did a video. There was a show called The Basement Tapes on MTV in 1985.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, sure.
And it said, if, you make a video and we like it, we'll put it up and there's a contest. And if you win, you know, something, we can have your video in rotation on MTV. It was a huge deal because MTV was brand new.
Yeah.
So I went out of my, and the balls I had, I think back then, I just went into the city and I started looking for people that, because video was brand new. This was
Yep.
really new. So it wasn't like easy to find. It was expensive to do it. But I found these guys that would shoot fashion shows that had those giant video cameras. And I found a guy named Ed Fabry, who was a director of videos of fashion shows. And I just randomly walked up to the guy and I said, would you be interested in doing a video for MTV? And he said, yeah, of course. Just
Right.
I had no idea what I was even going to do. And I was working in the studio at Monkey Hill Recording, and we were recording this song called I Want Out, which was a tune I wrote that I was, you know, everyone played on, and my brother played on. I had a great drummer, and I played bass guitar, all this stuff. I sang it. And we just basically faked our way into getting people to get on board to do this thing. You know, because I had to find film guys. It wasn't video. It was film, like actual 35 millimeter film it was shot on. And
oh, my God.
So we're talking about like, you know, major crews, you know, rigs, lighting.
Yeah.
We had, you know, camera tracks. It was insane. So I put this party together out here where I said, if you want to be on MTV, come and, you know, donate, I think $20 a piece or whatever. And tons of people did. And I raised thousands of dollars, which, you know, you got to remember I was only 24, 25 at the time. So this was a big ballsy thing to do. But then I had to find a place to actually do the video. No one would do it for free. They all wanted to charge me. So the last place that I tried was a place in Long Beach. It was a gay club called Cheeks. And they said, yeah, you can use the place for free, but we all want to be in the video.
Of
So I
course.
was like, yeah, I don't give a shit. It'd be great. I mean, the gayer, the better. Let's go.
Yeah, they can dance. It's good.
So they did. They were all in the video, and it was this whole thing. Anyway, it was this giant production that came off. We did it. It was great.
Right.
We submitted the video. I come home back in the days when you had the answering machine with the little red light blinking. So you got a message. I was like, oh, a message. And it was a guy from MTV saying, we loved your video and we'd like to air it. You know, this is after I had filmed it. I had to get it edited. I had to have it transferred to video, the whole bit. It was a big deal for a kid.
Right. Yep.
And it went on. And it was like a big thing. It was successful, and it ended up being rotated for like a month on MTV. And from that, there was a guy named Bruce Gilmer, great guy, who ended up starting basically a lot of what VH1, which was an offshoot of MTV. Bruce Gilmer was a major part of that in its beginning days. He created the show Unplugged, actually.
Oh, wow.
Bruce Gilmer loved what we did, got in touch with me. We met. He was a great guy. And he said, listen, let me put you in contact with some people that are looking to, scouts for Star Search. And Star Search, for people that don't know, was what what American Idol is today. That's what Star Search was. It was the only big talent show in the world, really. It was huge.
Yep.
Ed McMahon was the host, all that stuff. So we're like, yeah, great, you know. So he got us in these clubs to play in New York City. Remember, we're doing all original music. It was our stuff. There was a club that Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones owned called Woody's that we played at regularly. And also the Marquee Club, which doesn't exist anymore, was a big place. But they were big clubs to work at the time. And Woody's was great. It was kind of like one part was an art gallery for Ron Wood's art. The other part was a nightclub that was a popular nightclub at the time. And we did a bunch of shows with an unknown up-and-coming band called Blues Traveler. Remember the guy with the harp?
Oh, sure, with the 1,000 harmonicas.
Yeah. So those guys were excellent, and they would have lines around the block. It's before they were known, really, but they were coming up. So we were fortunate to play with them a bunch of times, which put us in front of their audience, and also it looked good if talent scouts were coming down and stuff. So this guy Bruce Gilmer sent, guys from Star Search to come and see us, and they loved it, and they asked us to audition for Star Search, which then became, it was at a place, rehearsal studio in New York City called SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals, which is no longer there. It was on 52nd Street. It's where everybody rehearsed all the time. It's great. But there was like a line around the block. So we're like, oh, shit, we're never going to get on this thing.
Right.
Stay on it. We're on the line. finally get to go in and play. And it was like 3 people with cameras. And I said, all right, go up, play 3 songs. And they filmed it. When we were done, they said, well, if you're on, you'll get a call. And that was it. I said, there's no way we're going to get on, because it just seemed like impossible.
Big cattle call. Big cattle call.
Yeah, it was gigantic, and huge amount of people there. But 2 weeks later, I got a call, you're going to be on Star Search. I'm like, holy shit. So they flew us out to LA. We had to do 3 songs, but they said every song had to be no more than 2 minutes long.
Really?
So we had to figure out a way of taking songs that, let's say your song was 3 minutes and 20 seconds. We had to figure out a way of making it work within that 2-minute frame, which was nearly impossible, but we figured it out.
Yeah.
We figured out what songs we could edit and do a certain way, and they flew us out there, and, we went on Star Search. It was like, and then we kept winning the shows and then ended up in the finals. Big thing, And
it's a dream.
it was crazy. Like, all this stuff happened so fast too. And
within like what, like a 2-year period, 3-year period? Or?
2 years. I mean, what got the ball rolling for me was I was profiled in Guitar Player magazine when I was 24, 1985.
Right.
A guy named Mike Varney had a column called Spotlight, and he had a record label called Shrapnel Records. So he was signing all these unknown guitar guys like Shredder. It was the days of Eddie Van Halen and all that stuff. And I went in as a bass player because I realized, there's a billion guitar players. I play bass as well. So I sent in a demo playing bass, and a lot of chops and funk and all this stuff. And the guy loved it. And he put me in, profiled me. And it was huge because that was worldwide. And that was to me, that was like the Mount Everest of it's like getting an Oscar. You're in Guitar Player magazine. And this guy Mike sent me a tape right away of a guy that he had discovered. And he said, I want you to listen to this guitar player, and I'd love you to play bass with him. You guys would be a great match and all this shit. And he sent me this thing, and I'm like, I didn't know I couldn't make heads or tails of it. It was just like insanely fast guitar playing.
Okay.
Startlingly fast. Like, I'd never heard anything like that, but clean and articulate at the same time. But I didn't really get the music part of it. There was no singing. It was like instrumental. And I was 24, and I was kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't really get this. He goes, I think you should do it, though. It'd be really great. And I said, I don't know. I just don't understand what it is. Turns out the guy was Yngwie Malmsteen, who was a Swedish guitar player who's insanely good, fast, blah, blah, blah. But he ended up becoming famous like a year or 2 later. A band Alcatraz he was in. But anyway, I didn't do it. But yet that magazine thing started the ball rolling. It got me an audition with Billy Idol, like immediately.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
First big audition I ever did was because of Guitar Player magazine. So I'm just prefacing all this stuff before, because you have to kind of know how the lineage of it is,
Yeah, sure.
So I'm going to
interrupt you for 1 second. You know what I find? What I'm hearing is just amazing in that, you're pioneering stuff that people are doing today, but in a field of millions, with YouTube and everything else. But you kept on throwing it out there. You had to send a tape in. You took a ballsy move and probably went into debt with the film, but it led to other things. And I don't know, when I talk to artists, it just amazes me that when they're in with 2 feet, amazing things kind of happen. Anyway, just also observation.
I attribute a lot of it to no internet. No distractions on phones. A lot of it is that, because all this stuff really does waste time and distract from. Plus, I think that just being young, I didn't give a shit. I just would do stuff. I didn't think about things or consequences. You would just do it
to your benefit. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and it just hopefully works out. I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen with any of this stuff, because I just think I tried stuff. I was definitely a person, I still am, that will try things and see. In other words, a lot of people will think things through incorrectly. They'll think negatively about, well, I'm not going to do that because this is going to happen or this is going to happen. And then they don't do anything. And I think that's really stupid, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
You have to try it,
I agree with you 100%. There's nothing that gets a bug up my ass quicker than running through all the things that can go wrong and dismiss things out of hand before you even try it. And that's tough. And when you're young, man, the world's your oyster. As we get older,
Yeah.
it's a little easier to fall into. I've seen that happen before. I'm not
Well,
going
you
to
do.
do
You get
that.
jaded.
Yeah,
You get
you get
sort of
jaded, right?
complacent about stuff, and you
Right,
also
right.
start to have contempt for everything, which isn't good. But listen, it's how it works. You understand why your parents were kind of just like after a certain age because they've seen
right.
shit happen. Most of the
Yeah,
time,
Jeff's going through a phase.
yeah,
He'll snap out of it.
most of the time things don't work out the way you think they're going to work out. So
Of
in any
course, right.
event, all this stuff happened mostly because of that initial Guitar Player magazine thing, because that led me to being profiled in Guitar for the Practicing Musician, Bass Player magazine. It opened up a whole thing. It got me this audition with Billy Idol when he was the biggest thing in the world as a bass player I was doing, which was a major,
Wow.
major, major thing. And that's a whole story unto itself. So then it got me, I think I had the confidence to just do stuff because things started to click into place a bit better, So that was great. And then the video opened up a lot of things because it got me on Star Search with my brother, and we ended up doing Star Search, and from Star Search we ended up getting a deal on this label called Robber Baron Records out of Philadelphia, which was another wonderful thing because he saw us. This guy, Alex Murphy, offered us a deal. He started a label basically to put our record out. We recorded a great record called Normal All Around Men, Tall Boys. And that went out. They had all these major ads in the College Music Journal. And it ended up getting on the College Music charts, which was at that time a big thing. It was right around the time, actually, Nirvana released Nevermind.
Oh gosh.
So
Yeah,
I remember seeing a chart where we were like number 2, Nirvana's thing was like number 8. Of course, that changed really quick. No one knew what Nirvana was until then. It was, huge. But
right.
we were sort of late to the party musically. What we were doing was more prominent or popular, I should say, 10 years earlier. Like the whole Squeeze Joe Jackson, Elvis Costello thing is really where we were coming from, which was not what was happening by the time our record was done. It was more of the grunge thing going on, where you had every A&R guy in the country signing anyone wearing a flannel shirt.
Right. What was interesting too, I think I saw a video where you guys played in the UK. Is that correct? Or
the
maybe
UK?
It was a different...
No.
Yeah. Do you ever play in the UK?
No. Nope.
Okay. Because there were Tall Boys.
That's a
labeled
different
Tall Boys. Different band. I'm like, okay, maybe that was their grunge.
There was a band named Tall Boys that existed out of Canada, briefly, which we found out about years later. But yeah, no, we didn't.
Yeah. Okay. So you were a little late to the party with the genre that they wanted to.
I think musically, yeah. I mean, we were being looked at. We got a really good, after all of this happened, my brother and I were still writing, and we ended up clicking with a great, prominent music attorney named Andy Darrow, great guy out of New York City, who ended up, he was a big deal. He signed the producers, got them a deal, which was another great band we loved. He loved our music. Mm-hmm. So he had us really major showcasing in New York City, and we did a lot of showcasing from Madonna's label called Maverick. She had a label after the success of Alanis Morissette on Maverick. She was looking for new acts. Her label was actually. Okay. The other label was J Records or Arista. It was Clive Davis. Clive Davis he was the president of Arista Records, but then he started a label called J Records. But they kept coming down and seeing the band at each time at very senior levels. But no one really ever did anything. We'd be going out to dinner with these A&R guys, and at one point I go, "Are you guys actually going to do something?" I mean, it just seemed like they were on these they had these budgets that they. And they was, you guys are great, just didn't click, it never happened. And I was paying for I'd put these bus trips together where I'd, because I'm out on the island on the East End, I would rent these buses and we'd load them up with beer and food and stuff and just bring all these people and they'd get all drunk on the way in and then show up to a club that would have normally been empty. And now it looks like a packed club and everyone's going crazy. So we did that a lot too, which made it look good for when these record labels.
I like that idea about literally driving the audience to the club.
Drive the audience there and they're already drunk. So it's perfect.
That's the, well, maybe the venue wants them to drink more, but they're primed.
Totally primed. So, it was a good eye opener to what the business is. And the guy, Andy Darrow, who was really thought we were going to get a deal. And when it didn't happen, he was very discouraged and he literally got out of the music business. It was when things were changing. Well, he did great. Yeah. He ended up working in film and stuff. He's a terrific guy. He's out in LA now, but he was just kind of like, he could see the writing on the wall. Stuff was starting to
Yeah.
happen where, when music became free, essentially, it was the end of the business because, it devalued everything. So it ruined,
Right. And
it ruined
look
everything.
where we
really.
are today. Yeah, and look where
Where
we
we
are
are
today.
today.
Right?
Exactly. It's not coming back. That's it, so it's kind of the timing of what we were doing. If we were 10 years earlier, we would have been, I think, in a better place because it was before downloading, and we would have been more about current with what was happening,
Right.
But
Hey, let's do this, Jeff.
yeah.
Let's take a quick break. And
All
when
right.
we come back, and I just want to make one comment too.
Yeah.
Even you took the risk of doing all these different things, but if it wasn't backed up by woodshedding your craft and writing and all the other things, it never would have happened.
Yeah.
It's not a gimmick.
Well,
you
no, I
have
think,
that
you have to,
foundation.
you have to be really, really good. I think anything you pursue in life, if you're not really, really good in terms of art, don't bother because there's plenty of mediocre people out there. So,
Agreed.
be good,
Oh,
be as good as you can be.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to take a quick break. Everybody stick with us. We got a lot more to cover.
The Long Island Sound is here to help you connect with local artists. Follow us on Instagram for the latest up-to-date podcast episodes and also to connect with your local artists and their upcoming shows.
Tune?
I know it. Rainbow Connection by Paul Williams.
Bingo. Very good.
So that actually is a good bridge into what I want to talk about. And the other night, so Paul Williams is on the board of APSCAP.
Yep.
APSCAP. And it's very interesting and tragic to a point of what's happening with AI in music and the music industry and the rights that need to be protected for the songwriter. And I'll just tell a quick story. I went to see Jimmy Webb play at my father's place.
Right.
Yeah.
Pete Mancini was the opener. And
yeah, I've had Pete. I love Pete's stuff. Pete is just a really great guy. Great guy. He's been on the podcast a couple of times and actually co-hosted with me when we interviewed Robin Wilson of the Gin Blossoms. Anyway, that being what it is. So what was so nice about Jimmy Webb, he had a great balance between entertainment, storytelling, and singing and playing at 78 years old. He was just really amazing. But he also went into, he's on the board, I think, along with Paul Williams, talking about the threat against the creatives, the songwriters like
Right.
yourself. And I'll get on my soapbox with the audience here. We have to protect the rights of the songwriter.
Yeah.
Because the threats are really there. And AI is fantastic with many things in what I do with my show, but you have to throw kudos and money and support to the songwriters out there, because it's got to have that human touch. And I just want your thoughts on that.
I mean, yeah, of course, I agree with you, but it's just never going to happen. We're screwed. The business is over. Party's over, because it's too far gone. No one's going to turn around and then start paying for things that they didn't pay for years. That's the problem. If it was nipped in the bud earlier, maybe. But remember, anything that's digital is free. So whatever you put up, photographs, you write a magazine article, you're a screenplay writer, you're a filmmaker, you're a musician, it's free. You can't turn around after years of people getting it for nothing and then saying, oh, no, you're going to pay for it. No one's going to do it. So it's sad. It's just very sad, because no matter what, it's not going to turn around and come back in favor of the artists, and it's a drag.
The only outlet, and you do this, is playing live.
That's it. I mean,
and the merch thing is kind of goofy, but it's a means to an end for artists to support themselves.
It's why I'm involved in a very successful tribute act right now it's an Adele tribute act.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, please.
Yeah. And that's, an amazing band I have. The girl I work with, Jennifer Cella, is incredible. She was a person that was in Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Our first gig was Madison Square Garden together, which was amazing.
With TSO, right?
Yeah. And, we all realize, if you were to tell me 35 years ago that tribute acts would be dominating, I'd laugh. What are you talking about? I mean, I thought it was a joke when Beatlemania happened. Like,
right.
About seeing phony Beatles. But the reality is that people, if they're going to go out and spend money, they want to know what they're going out to spend money for. And, it's proper theater shows, it's really good. I got to say, I love what I'm doing with this group. They're so good. The music is great, what we're doing. And it's a really nice theater show, and it's just, I just didn't think that's how things would turn out. But we are all great musicians in a world going, well, where can you really make money doing this, Because if you think about it, for playing clubs and bars, the money's the same as it was 45 years ago.
$100 a man if you're lucky.
Ridiculous,
absolutely.
I can't do that. I can't just say, oh yeah, it's fine, even though I can't say, oh, I'm going to get the same amount of money that this kid who just started 3 weeks ago who can barely play is getting. It makes no sense.
Right.
So that's the same thing with songwriters, It's why the Beatles resisted for so long having their music on Apple, because, Apple, basically everything was 99 cents. How can groups like the Beatles be the same as something that just, anyone puts up? It really totally fucked everything up. And it's going to remain as such, for our lifetime anyway. I can't imagine it going back to that, I mean, but listen,
go ahead. Sorry.
It's what happens when when technology comes to fruition. It's great initially, and then it all turns to shit. It's like something bad also comes of it,
Yeah, right. Both sides of the coin. And you bring up a good point where you said, hey, I wouldn't have imagined this years ago, but you're making hay out of it now, and you're giving a spotlight to, and this is where my curiosity is, at least with this podcast, has always been, one, what's that guy's story? What's that gal's story?
Yeah.
And now that can be a bridge to your original work and seeing you on your own, so to speak.
Yeah, yes and no, but still, I don't think people give a shit about original music. I don't think they care anymore. I think it's
you're probably right.
There's way too many choices for free. So if you can spend hours and hours on YouTube, just spiraling out of control, looking at everything you want to ever look at and listen to for nothing. Why would you spend your time on something unknown? You're not going to do it. You know, nobody does. They might say they do, but they're full of shit. They don't really do that. You know?
Right. You want that. Yeah. That's where I struggle with. I like the familiarity of the Laurel Canyon set, the Jackson Browne, Neil Young, stuff like that. Stuff that if you whatever group that you followed in high school, you're going to live with that group in your mind for the rest of your life. But to me, what drives me is seeing somebody play live. I guess that's the game changer for me.
Me too.
Making the connection for the audience.
Absolutely. I love new music too. I love hearing new music. The problem is I haven't heard anything really that is better than things that have come before.
I follow you.
And I'm not going to be dismissive if it is. I'm going to say it is. Yeah, absolutely. And that in every genre. It can be in rap, it can be in jazz, it can be in pop music, classical. But as I said, once you've devalued everything and it's become free,
right?
It just ruins it for anyone. Why would you spend your life making music, that you're paying for? Your time, you have to record it. You're spending all your money, and then ultimately at the end of the day, you're giving it away, and no one even cares to take it for free. That's the problem. You know how many great songwriters I know that they just like, well, what's the point? I'm killing myself to do what? At the end of the day, give it away.
Right.
What are they making? They're not making anything.
Yeah, and you can fight. You can try to fight the Spotify's and the big. You're not going to win.
Get it? Ain't gonna.
Yeah, it's not going to win. Yeah. All right. Now that we brought the whole audience down.
Hey, fun.
Well, we're being real.
Well, it's funny. I talk about this with a lot of people. It's just the truth. People, if they're going to delude themselves and think it's the great business to go into, it's silly, because it really is a shit business, and it's worse than ever before in terms of how it used to be. Not to say it was great before either. I mean, when the old model of record labels existed, that wasn't the greatest thing either. There was payola. There was, everyone was waiting for someone to die so that they could get in there and do something. I mean, that was difficult as well. But the difference was there was guys like Clive Davis and Ahmet Ertegun, who were, ran Atlantic. They were visionaries. They were music fans, and they would get behind artists and nurture them. They wouldn't just dismiss them. The way it is now, if you're not selling 1 million units out of the box initially, then you're done. They would work with artists. You couldn't have people like Joni Mitchell and Janis Joplin's and, all these great sort of singer-songwriters, Chris Christopherson. It wouldn't exist today. They wouldn't get a deal. They wouldn't happen,
Right.
Because those people, Bob Dylan too. I mean, Bob Dylan wouldn't get, a deal today. No one cared. It was a different time. And I think what we've lost is our sense of intellect in a lot of ways, and our sense of patience. No one has any patience for anything. It's like everything's a soundbite. It's quick. You're scrolling. Everything's scrolling.
Yep. Yeah, if somebody isn't setting themselves on fire, you're not going to put your phone down to look.
No, so it's very hard to get people to listen. Like, I can't imagine anyone listening to an album anymore. I loved listening to an album. You'd go to your room, you put headphones on, and 40 minutes later, you were like, "Holy shit!" That's gone. That doesn't exist, and it's a wonderful experience. So, I teach a lot of young people, and I try to turn them on to that. I say, listen. This is something, it's not me being the old guy saying, I said, listen to this. I go, really go home and listen to this. It's a record. It's like a thematic thing. It's like reading a book. There's chapters, there's order to it. This song was meant to follow this song, which was meant to follow this song. There's a reason for that. The artist wrote it that way, and it's a wonderful experience to have. I'm sad about that no longer existing or having any merit,
Right.
Listen, it's not to say that being a musician is great, being an artist is great, but make sure you have something else happening financially, because you're never going to make money like you think you are unless you're able to do multiple things. I do a lot of stuff. I don't just do one thing, I do tons of different genres of music. I do a lot of sessions for people online, where I do bass or guitar tracks, help produce stuff, work with singer-songwriters. I teach. I have a full teaching schedule. I play, with my friend Jen, and we have the band together with the Adele thing as well, and that's great. But you have to be able to do that. You can't just say, "Oh, I just play guitar and that's it." Well, good
Yeah,
luck.
you have to be a utility person.
Yep.
Yeah, and as you know, now as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the people that I know that do that. Otherwise, they're if you're not a utility person, you have a full-time job in some sort of profession,
Yeah.
and you're doing this on the side, and you're working your ass off.
Yeah, what screwed it up for a lot of players locally was that this new phenomenon of guys like on pensions, retired, that could be halfway decent players. They all get nice new gear. They bring all their friends to the bar, so it looks good. And they don't care if they get paid or not because they already they have money. That completely fucks it up for professional musicians because they don't care. They're not, if I'm going out there and this is how I earn my living, but I'm competing with someone who's basically playing for nothing, but brings way more people down because all his friends want to come down and drink. That's a whole nother scenario as well that's happened in the last 10 years, so things have just radically changed,
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you adapted. I didn't you do like a cover girl band or something prior to the?
Well, Cover Girl was a band I had with Jennifer Cella before what I'm doing now with her, and that kind of during the pandemic, everything just came to a collapse,
Right.
So when things came back to life, we were playing as a duo, me and her. We still do, because it was easier to do, but we also quite like it. It's a really cool duo. We both are. She's really excellent. She's just a great, talented.
Oh yeah, I've heard her. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's a beautiful girl, and she's just really a great professional person. I really like working with her. So we have that going on, and then we also said, well, we were talking about doing another group, and she could sing Adele stuff, and that's really hard to sing, but she can really. She nails
Pull
it.
it off.
It's like an acting job. We do it as we suspend belief. You go to see our show, you're going to see Adele. It's the same thing. The difference is that we're not a nostalgia act. So when we started doing this, it wasn't like most tribute groups are groups that have long been either long dead or you're seeing an old version of it now. So people like to go see the younger version. That's what a tribute act kind of does. With Adele, there was she's current, so it was a harder sell initially, but because Adele recently just sort of retired, we're the only game in town. There are no other Adele tributes in the United States at all.
Oh, interesting.
Not much in the world, actually. So we're doing really, really well. I mean, we're selling out theaters everywhere. It's getting bigger and bigger, and I love it. I really do love it. It's a great group, and I really love the music. And again, I give it to her because she's great. She's just great.
And you know what? You picked up the fan base that's left there still yearning to hear that music. Kind of like what we spoke about before, the people who are
it wasn't like it went away. It's current. You know what I mean? It's not like we're not enticing it's already there because it's a current thing. So it's like I said, it's a little tougher it was initially, I think, a little tougher of a sell. A lot of older theater guys didn't quite get it. They thought it was like Beyonce or something. They didn't know what it was. So anyway,
that's great. Yeah, I'm happy for you. That's
Thanks.
really cool, and that kind of brings up some ideas about how to tackle this shitty business, the music business. And we spoke off about Pete Mancini, who I love.
Yeah.
And Pete did this whole thing with Bill Herman from Paradiddle Records. They did and Gene Casey, who both of us know, were on a Hank Williams tribute album, which I thought was great.
Yep.
And then Pete did this thing with Rich Lanahan, the work of Gene Clark of the Byrds.
Sure.
And I saw him at my father's place. I'm like, wow, this is really good. And then they regurgitated out and did a Byrds thing out in Stony Brook, and I'm like, this is kind of cool. This is something that it's kind of like an Adele thing, it kind of brings things to life. And me as a knucklehead audience guy, and I know I'm getting off you and I apologize, but the Hank Williams stuff, just made Hank Williams come alive for me. You know, you
Yeah.
forget about how huge his catalog is.
Amazing. Hank Williams is incredible. I mean, great,
Yeah.
incredible
And then
songwriter.
hearing all these artists from Long Island do their version or their take on things, I'm like,
Right.
hey, this is pretty cool. It's not exactly the way it would have been, which is not what I wanted, not what I
No,
wanted. And
no. I mean, if a good song is a good song, you know, I mean, that's the beauty of it. You know, you hear a tune done by somebody else, sometimes you even like it more because maybe you didn't like the person's voice that originally did, or you didn't like the way it would, maybe the recording was a scratchy old recording,
yep,
whatever, you know.
yep,
So
yep,
yeah, it's always nice to revisit those great songs, and there's plenty of them out there, you know.
yep. Hey, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about this. They list you as one of the founding members of the Trans-Siberian
Right.
Orchestra.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell an off-color joke. I heard it
They're all
today.
trans? Are they? How can
I
they all
said,
be
yeah,
trans?
I was like,
Every
you
one
don't
of them is
appear,
trans?
you don't appear to be trans. You've heard this joke before.
Yeah. They had
All
the
right.
guy from The Sopranos saying that. The what's his
Oh,
name?
come,
Like, yeah, that it was one of those memes floating around.
Jesus. Hey, get your attention, right? It's better than lighting yourself on fire. So give me the story behind that, because I think it's kind of fascinating and so unique. And
It's a great story. Paul O'Neill, who created TSO, and I were best friends. We grew up together. I
okay,
met him when I was 14 years old, and he was 18. We were both hired the same day to teach guitar above Family Melody Center, Patchogue Music Center in Patchogue. There was a
okay.
music school above that. I had a teacher named Pete Staganelli in school
Ooh,
who saw something in me as a kid and said, you know, I'm going to get you a job. We're going to say you're 16, even though I was 14. I'm going to bring you down to this school and see if they'll hire you as a guitar teacher. And that's exactly what he did.
child
And
labor. Nice.
yeah, the day I was there, I met Paul, who was also there as a kid right out of high school, or he was just still in high school looking for a job teaching. And
Oh, wow.
we both got hired that day. We became great friends. We had bands together. We played out as acoustic duos too. We were doing that, which I
Nice.
was underage to do it. But he was an interesting character, and he wrote songs back then. The first recording I ever did was with him in this guy Kenny Wallace's studio. This guy I still know to this day in Islip,
Okay.
in an 8-track studio, and that was the first time I recorded was with Paul O'Neill and his music. So Paul ended up Beatlemania was, as we just said before, Beatlemania was looking for a George Harrison.
Okay.
Paul kind of looked like George Harrison, and he went down and auditioned, and he got the role as the understudy to George
Okay.
Harrison.
Oh,
And I
that's
helped
funny.
Paul learn a lot. I'm a Beatles freak, so I knew a lot of that stuff, and I was able to, show Paul much of the Beatles guitar stuff as best I
Uh-huh.
could. I mean, at the time, I'm sure a lot of it was wrong, but anyway, he ended up working his way into the company that was producing Beatlemania was a company called Lieber and Krebs. It was the
Okay.
biggest rock management company in New York at the time. They managed Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, AC/DC, Def Leppard,
Oh, wow.
Mahogany Rush, on and on and on.
Right.
Paul ended up working for Lieber and Krebs. Lieber and Krebs produced Beatlemania, and it got Paul into the business because ultimately he said, calls me up and says, let's start a new band. I'm in the city now. I'm working at Lieber Krebs part-time, and I'm also working at SIR, which was the rehearsal studio I mentioned earlier on
Right.
52nd. We can rehearse here and all this stuff. So I gathered the guitar player that I was working with out here. This guy, Paul Silverstein, great guy, amazing musician. Him and I went in, got a local drummer, a guy named Frank Jeremita, who I'm still great friends with. He initially was the drummer. Then another guy came in named Steve Brodsky, and then a guy named Mike Ratty, who I love, who still plays with us. He became the main drummer. We started this band called Slow Burn, and we lived in New
Okay.
York. We had a great apartment on 90th Street and 3rd Avenue. It's a little shithole walk up. That was great. Railroad flat over this
Yep.
old man's bar. This Donovan's
I
was
know
a
the
classic.
neighborhood.
Yeah, Donovan's.
Yorkville.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
Yep. So we rehearsed at SIR, and Lieber Krebs ended up getting Joan Jett's company called Jet Lag, was part
Okay.
of Lieber Krebs management. And this is before Joan hit with I Love Rock and Roll.
All right.
So we were part of her thing, Jet Lag. So we had a really great thing going on. It was a great band. We were recording in Electric Lady Studios, the Record Plant, and the Hit Factory.
Wow.
Which was amazing. Paul got shit done. I mean, he was unbelievable with how he was able to finagle stuff. It was a progressive rock band. It was really theatrical, and it was the beginnings of TSO.
Okay.
So once that faded away, Paul got more into the business end of things. He ended up producing. He produced 2 live Aerosmith records for Lieber Krebs. He also produced a band called Badlands, which was on Atlantic, I think, with his guitarist Jake E. Lee and a singer named Ray Gillen. Great band. Then he got involved in a band called Savatage out of Florida, which had a deal on Atlantic Records, and created this whole thing based on one tune, actually, called Sarajevo 1224, which became the impetus of TSO.
Okay.
It was just an idea he concocted, these stories using Christmas music, some classical lifts, but also writing original music with these stories that Paul wrote a lot of stories. Paul loved Oscar Wilde and was a great, words guy. So I did a lot of the demos of early TSO now, not knowing what it was or what it was even going to be because there was no show yet. But, Paul always had ideas that somehow he worked out and they became real. And this was one of them. He put this thing together. He got a deal on Atlantic Records for this thing and put a group together. And all of a sudden, man, it just took off. So I was with Taylor Dane at the time as a touring bass player. Okay. And Paul, after a couple of years of that, Paul said, listen, this thing is I want you to check it out, which I did. I went to the Beacon Theater. I'll never forget. It was like 2 nights sold out at the Beacon Theater with this thing. I go, how the hell? What's going on here? Within 2 years, it was selling out Madison Square Garden, and then ultimately what it is now. It's one of the top grossing tours in the world every year.
And you have an East Coast and a West Coast.
2 touring companies that go out simultaneously, and it's all stadiums, it's just a huge production. It's visually amazing. A great guy named Brian Hartley, who does all the visual stuff, is just astounding. It's one of those things that you just go, holy crap, I didn't see this coming. But, I was there from the very, very, very beginning of all that stuff. And, every step of the way, I worked with them for many, many years. And then Paul passed away, sadly, in 2017. So once he was gone, I was kind of done. I didn't want to be a part of it anymore.
Right. It's got a life of its own at this point, right?
Well, yeah, it had a life of its own for 20 years already. I mean, it's just
it been that? Wow.
It's longer than that. This started in 1996.
Oh, amazing. Wow.
Yep. It's a big deal. And every record has sold millions and millions of copies. And, it's crazy. It's a really unbelievable story. And, it was Paul's idea. He created the idea. It was his stories, his writings. And then the people that he assembled, some of the best musicians on the planet ended up in this thing. And just a terrific group of people. I mean, some of the greatest players I've ever worked with.
Oh, really?
TSO. Yep.
Nice. Now, what I find interesting about your career is the fact that I started the podcast off. You're trained classically. Yeah. You're playing with Taylor Dane. You're playing with all these genres. Learning funk and stuff like that. That really, it just broadens what can Jeff do? Well, he can do anything. Really.
Well, I don't know about everything, but I like a lot of music. I think I started out studying classical guitar, and I was really interested in maybe even pursuing that as a career. But I like too many other things. I love rock and roll. I love pop. I love funk. I'm a Beatles flip. I love Beatles. So everything. And I love playing bass too. I don't just like playing guitar. I love playing bass as well. So it's tough because to be proficient, it's a lot of work. Like I said, it's not like I'm a perfectionist with stuff that I do. I can't do things lazily or half-assed, it's got to be really good, which requires a lot of work, and sometimes I also know what I can't do. And that's important as well.
Good point. Yep.
A lot of people do things they shouldn't be doing. So to know your limitations and what you're, work within your wheelhouse, it's very important too, It's, at least in the front of people, don't go out there and try to sing a song it's way out of your range or whatever, or just you're not
Right.
pulling off
Don't wing it.
stylistically.
Never wing it.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to do that. I mean, some people are good at it, naturally good at it, and I do like that idea of being spontaneous and all that. It is good, but back it up with years of training, and I look at what I did as, it's like I always use the analogy, if you went out to a club and danced, and you just kind of naturally danced, but you studied ballet or something, so you know how to move, you understand rhythm. So when you're just naturally dancing, it's way better,
Right, exactly. So let me ask you, you still writing songs?
I do. I write. Yeah. Yep.
I'm very curious. How has your writing, or how has the muse struck you now as maybe 20 years ago? Is there anything that's really different?
Yeah,
I mean,
a
your
lot is
experience,
different.
is it different, or?
Yeah, it's different in the sense that it's like I said earlier, there's no point in it. There's no end game. So if I write something, it usually is when I'm working with someone else's project that they're stuck with a middle section. They don't have a B section of a tune, or they don't have a good verse, or that's when that's most of the writing I do. I'm not really writing songs for myself as much because, as I said, no one gives a shit. It doesn't matter. You're doing it and you could talk about all this stuff, but at the end of the day, you're not selling it to anyone.
Right.
That's the problem. So my feelings about it are ambivalent, I think, because I love it, but at the same time, there's no end to it. There's no reason to do it in terms of why you're doing it.
I follow you.
I'm not
Right,
interested in spending countless hours of my time and money and all this stuff to basically just give it away. It doesn't appeal to me so much. I do it. That's the problem with musicians and artists, is that business people always know they have you over a barrel because you're going to do it anyway. And that's the problem. That's the problem. You could say, oh yeah, I deserve this. You don't deserve anything, because it doesn't matter. I know you're still going to do it, and you'll still gladly take what I will give you.
Well, you gave me something. Thanks. May have another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that that's what's happened, and like when I see Gene Casey, that's a good example. To me, Gene Casey is a star. He's a total star. He's great. He should be hugely famous,
Right.
And he works his ass off, But again, it's what it is. He knows, there is no real business, in that sense. I mean, the way country music is very different from how it used to be, That's where the pop music is coming out of. And it's a very small club that they're not letting new people in, because no one wants to lose that position. So it's harder to kind of break in. And then when you actually do, you're not making money selling records. That's over. So the only thing you can do really is tour relentlessly. So that's the lifestyle you have to say, yeah, all right, I'm going to just be on the road for the rest of my life touring. That's the only way I'm going to earn a living.
Which gets old really quick, having traveled in sales.
Yeah,
and it's tough.
It is.
Yeah, the hang can be great. The experience of performing can be great. And the rest of the stuff in between is tough.
But it is hard. It's hard to be away. It's hard to be traveling constantly, not sleeping in your bed and all that stuff. But, listen, it's still okay. It's like, it's just totally different,
Yep. I agree. But I tell you, I learned a lot. I really appreciate you spending the time with me today.
Yeah, man.
And getting your perspective on things gave me some new light about the industry, even though it's so difficult. But what you've done with absolutely Adele, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, that whole thing, it's an interesting way of delivering music and entertainment out to the masses. And things. The only thing we can depend on is change, I guess. So
it's good and it's bad. Like everything. Like I said, I think these things happen every decade or 20 years, or maybe even more, where things are radically different. And so much has been altered because of the internet and because of digital downloading, and that is the real crux of the whole deal. Why things are so screwed up? Because, as I said earlier, once you devalue something to that point, where are you going? It's not making new. It's not. You're not going to have new artists all excited to come. Oh, I'm going to do this, because they know too. Everybody knows. Well, what am I going to do?
Right. Right.
I'm going to go
Exactly.
starve somewhere else. Like say, oh, I'm going to go to Nashville. I say, oh, you're going to go to Nashville to starve now instead of starving in New York. Excellent.
That's right. And you brought up something because I spoke to somebody down there and you about Nashville, and it is a club, and it's almost
Totally.
analogous to, this may sound weird, medical schools.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get it.
Medical schools, they keep it so we don't want too many doctors. We'll import doctors, but we not in my town type of thing. And dude, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Hey, will you play another tune for us?
Sure.
I don't mean to cut you off there.
Well, I was going to say art will happen. It'll always happen. It's going to happen for free.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Great
What's
piece
that?
by Leo Kottke. It's a piece called Mona Ray by the great Leo Kottke.
Wow. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Hey, Jeff, it's been, what a great way to end 2024. I appreciate your time. As they say, you can account for what's in your bank and what you own. You can account for the time you have left. The fact that you gave me over an hour of your time, I really appreciate it. And it's so good to know you. And can't wait to meet you in person. So
you're a good interview.
Thanks.
You know why? Because you listen.
Tell my wife that. She says I don't. All right. Until next time, everybody, be well. Let the music take you on a journey. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace.